I just wanted to put this up on the screen here because this is a big liberal account here who tweeted this out. You did a joint event with Shama Sawant and I'm sorry, his full name is Hassan Abdel Salam. Sorry about that.
Yes,
who founded the Aaron Harris movement, and this got a lot of press. This got the liberals pretty triggered and riled up here because Shama puts it very bluntly, as Hassan does as well. So I'll play Shama's piece of video, and then I will play Hassan's, and then we'll get your take.
Election has already started. Absentee ballots have been sent. We need to catch up rapidly. We need everyone here to get active. We need to be clear about what our goals are. We are not in a position to win the White House, but we do have a real opportunity to win something historic. We could deny Kamala Harris the state of Michigan. And the polls show that most likely Harris cannot win the election without Michigan.
Okay, so that tweet got 3.3 million views. Keith Edwards very upset. Wow, Shama Sawant admits Stein can't win and is only in the race to prevent Kamala from winning. And then he features Hassan the next day. There you are in the background. He says something very similar.
No mistake that this rumble of abandon guarantees a failure for the vice president, the loss of Michigan, and the loss of the White House. That we can depose the leaders who sit atop a superpower, a success that will happen immediately when we know the results on the 5th of November.
So, liberals and Democrats always try to tarnish you as a spoiler, but I found really interesting about Hassan and Shama's speeches there is that they seem to really embrace the power flex that come with saying, no, we actually will cause you to lose, and we're perfectly fine with that. So do you echo those sentiments, or do you see your campaign differently?
So they do not speak for the campaign. And if you heard our event last night, where we did another event here in Seattle with Workers Strike Back, Shama actually acknowledged, and every time I am a part of these events, I express our intentions, which are not only to defeat Kamala Harris, but are also to defeat Donald Trump. So we have a different approach. We have different histories, and I completely understand and respect where they are coming from. So far be it from me to tell them what their political strategy is, especially for the Muslim Americans whose strategy has been paid for in blood. So I'm not going to tell them what their politics should be. I'm really grateful that there's so much overlap between our strategies. And, having been an activist myself for a couple of decades, I'm coming from a different place, certainly different from the Muslims who are newly taking an oppositional stance. I'm very much looking at what we have to win and coming at this as, a medical doctor motivated by the threats here to our survival. Fundamentally, I am extremely conscious that we're on a rapid trajectory for oblivion here, whether it's from nuclear war, and climate collapse and so on. Those are probably the most immediate risks. That's kind of the perspective I'm coming from. And I'm very aware that we don't fix that simply by defeating Kamala Harris. That's part of it. But in my book, what we're aiming for here is survival, nothing less than that, especially right now as the war is expanding rapidly in the Middle East. Israel's genocidal war, has expanded to the West Bank, to Lebanon, and is on the verge of expanding now to engage Iran. And Iran may come with Russia, and who knows where it will end. And there is a real risk of potential the use of nuclear weapons. So, I'm extremely mindful as someone who's coming from a place where health and survival are paramount. Those are my goals. And I know we don't get there just by defeating Kamala Harris. My intentions really are about supporting this movement that will defeat both of them and that will ensure that we have an America and a world that works for all of us, and an end to nuclear threats, expanding war, crushing inequality, climate collapse, all the rest. That's where I'm going. And that's what my remarks are always about. And, I, as a rule, I always state clearly, that our goal is to defeat both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. They are both genociders. Just to look at the immediate situation, in order to stop genocide, we must stop them both. And my message is very much that one must not cast a vote for genocide, period. If you vote for it, you are endorsing it and you are enabling it. Right now, as money continues to pour into Israel to reward their, unbelievably murderous strategies and behavior, they are being rewarded and they are being encouraged to expand their war, and specifically to engage Iran. And we now have many boots on the ground, let alone, a lot of naval resources, which also come with a lot of naval servicemen and women, and 40,000 U.S. servicemen and women in the Middle East to start with. So the more we pour in, the more at risk we are for being engaged in a major conflagration here. So, for me, beating Kamala Harris is not enough. And I do not subscribe to the view that there is a greater or lesser evil in this race. There are two evils in the two major parties, and our job is to stand up and fight for the greater good and build it with all due urgency, because we are out of time and extremely at risk for, the situation that has been bought and paid for by AIPAC, Wall Street, the war machine, the usual suspects. Fixing this around the margins isn't going to do it. We really need a movement for the long haul. And what I'm delighted with is that both Abandon Harris and Workers Strike Back see the ultimate goals here in these terms as well. And I should mention, last night, Shama specifically acknowledged that we have differences of opinion within the movement. And when she basically said the same thing last night, that, we can do something historic and deny Kamala Harris a victory, she qualified that, saying that that was her opinion. And that was the opinion of Workers Strike Back. It is not the opinion of the campaign. She doesn't speak for the presidential campaign. And that we are having, an internal, or it's not even internal because we're not internal to anything, but, within movement, debate about this, a healthy, public, and open debate. And I couldn't ask for anything more.
Sure. I mean, I think that's a totally fair answer. And I know Shama fairly well. I've gotten to know her fairly well over this past year or so. And Russell interviewed Hassan at the Chicago event that you spoke at as well. And they're both unequivocally anti-Harris and anti-Trump. Yeah. So I don't think they're saying we need to tank Kamala in Michigan and cost her the election because they like Trump. I think that what they're saying is that if we can deny Kamala Michigan, that is a flex for our movement. That makes people take us more seriously. In other words, damn right, we're going to take votes from Democrats. That's what we're here to do. And as a strategy, do you think that gives the Greens more power to influence the actual outcome of the election, even if you can't necessarily win it outright?
I think you can kind of wordsmith this into whichever strategy you want. You can say that we are taking votes away, or we are giving people a reason to come out and vote who otherwise won't, because that's certainly true of the Muslim community at this point. If we weren't in the race, they would not be voting. And the instructions, 130 highly respected imams wrote a letter in which they basically recommended that Muslims not vote for either party, for either major party, right, and that they vote instead for a third party. And most Muslims that I have talked to, at any rate, are consistent with that. And if we weren't in the race, they wouldn't have anybody to vote for. And that's what I hear from people over and over again. And I try to keep the focus on that fact, as opposed to playing into one critique or the other, because the Democrats are hungry for material to smear us with. And I'm not crazy about giving them, fodder for more smear. So I'm just not going to use the language that they want me to use in order to attack us most viciously. I'd rather just keep eyes on the prize here, on what we are doing, and acknowledge that, yes, in a democracy, what you're supposed to do is compete for votes. And it's extremely anti-democratic for the Democratic Party to suggest that they own those votes, whether people are voting or not voting. They don't own your vote. And it's up to voters to decide, who deserves their vote. And anyone who says that they are entitled to your vote or is attempting to extort your vote out of fear, in my view, they do not deserve even consideration of your vote. So on many counts, I think, the Democrats and their strategy of extorting the vote, really do not deserve support in this election, period.
Please clap.